They sued me for a $900 shed. Not because it broke zoning rules, but because I was the zoning officer. It started like this. I just moved into this sleepy suburb outside Lexington, Kentucky. A picture-perfect HOA community called Bent Creek Ridge, all vinyl fences, matching mailboxes, and Stepford smiles. I wasn't just a homeowner, I was a licensed zoning appeals officer for the county. Meaning, if you wanted to challenge building code decisions, I was the guy who heard your case. At first, no one knew. I kept to myself. My house backed up to woods, I planted native shrubs, and after a year, I bought a simple prefab shed from Home Depot. Cost me $900, including the slab. 1 week later, boom. Violation notice nailed to my front door. Unauthorized structure in rear yard. Must be removed within 14 days. Fines to accrue daily after deadline. I blinked. Because I'd written the zoning code they were quoting. I'd pulled the right permits. Setbacks. Compliant. Height limit. Under it. Drainage. Certified. The HOA. They never filed a formal objection when I submitted the design packet. But that didn't matter. Because the moment I showed up to dispute it, everything changed. The HOA board president, a guy named Don Trask, locked eyes with me across the clubhouse conference table and said flatly, "This neighborhood has standards. Your structure offends them." I asked him to cite a clause. He quoted a draft guideline, never ratified. Then smirked. "You can appeal," he said, "but it'll come back to us." That's when I knew. This wasn't about the shed. This was a power play. 2 days later, I came home to find a flyer stuffed in my mailbox, zoning officer or zoning outlaw. They'd printed my name, my job, and an out-of-context quote from a past case. Called me a threat to neighborhood character. Said I'd bent rules for my own gain. Worse, neighbors began to avoid me. One dad yanked his kid off my lawn like I had a disease. A woman at the grocery store whispered, "You're that guy with the illegal shed, right?" Then I found out about the meeting. A closed-door HOA gathering, held without notice. I only learned about it because a junior board member, I'll call her Lacey, slipped me an anonymous email. She said Don was pushing to impose retroactive design rules. "Just for you," she wrote. "No one else is getting these fines." Knowledge nugget number 1, HOAs cannot retroactively enforce architectural rules unless your original agreement explicitly allows it, and most don't. So I dug deeper. I started attending public HOA meetings. Recording them. Requesting financial disclosures under state nonprofit law. That's when I saw the ledger. A line item called Civic Integrity Fund. No description. Just monthly withdrawals, $1,250 each, coded as legal services. But no law firm listed. No receipts. And the fund itself? Not in the charter. I traced the address tied to the payments, a P.O. box rented by Don's sister, a paralegal with no license to practice. I confronted them at the next meeting. "Where's the retainer agreement?" I asked. Don looked like I'd slapped him. Board members froze. One muttered, "We don't have to answer that." But the room had shifted. Murmurs. Eyes darting. I wasn't the only one asking questions anymore. That night, Lacey knocked on my door. "I think you should see this," she said, holding a manila envelope. Inside, a printed chain of emails. Don, 2 other board members, and a developer named Crosswell, discussing plans to rezone 5 wooded lots behind our homes into a private access road. That road? It would raise the value of 10 properties, all owned by Don's investment group. And my shed? It partially blocked the proposed line of sight for their access point. Suddenly the $900 shed was a $900,000 problem. Knowledge nugget number 2, if an HOA board member stands to profit from a rezoning decision, they must disclose the conflict, or risk civil and even criminal penalties under state law. That night, I filed formal ethics complaints with the county and the state real estate board. I also flagged the HOA with the IRS for unreported taxable activities. And I wasn't done. I called a friend at the EPA. Told her about the planned road cutting through a creek bed. 2 weeks later, a knock. Federal wetland violation notice, slapped on Don's lot. He turned red in the face, screamed at the agent. "You think I'm scared of permits?" Lacey filmed the whole thing from her porch. Then, things got ugly. Someone broke into my shed. They didn't steal anything, but they spray-painted the words "Scab Judge" across the back wall. Lacey got anonymous threats. Her tires were slashed. And a week later, boom. I was served. A civil suit from the HOA, failure to comply with community aesthetic standards. Seeking $5,000 in fines and forced removal of structure. Which made no legal sense. Because in court, they'd have to prove the rule existed. Screenshot this clause, I posted online, showing the HOA's own covenant with no mention of sheds. Tag a friend who needs HOA armor. It went viral in local legal circles. Suddenly I had allies. A zoning attorney offered pro bono help. A retired judge submitted an amicus brief. Even the county commission chimed in, warning the HOA they were potentially undermining public trust in local governance. We filed a countersuit. Demanded full HOA financial transparency, restitution for defamation, and board member resignations. 3 weeks later, Don was arrested for wire fraud linked to the Civic Integrity Fund. The courtroom showdown was surreal. Don tried to argue the shed disrupted harmony. The judge asked, "Is harmony in the bylaws?" "No," Don muttered. "Then you have no case." Knowledge nugget number 3, in civil court, aesthetic preference means nothing without a clear contractual clause, and ambiguous language is ruled against the author. The court ordered the HOA to pay my legal fees. They dissolved the old board. Elections were held. Lacey's now president. And the shed? Still standing. I added solar panels. And I carved a little brass plaque into the front door. Dedicated to civic vigilance. In the months after, we found other abuses. Don's group had funneled nearly $80,000 to phantom consultants. We exposed it all. We rewrote the bylaws. We started a neighborhood scholarship fund using recovered HOA funds, open to any kid in the subdivision. The woods behind my house. Now protected as greenbelt under a conservation easement I helped draft. But last week, I got a letter. No return address. Inside was a key. Just a small, rusty shed key, and a note. You forgot what's under the slab. Next week, the city that tried to steal a solar farm